The series loss to Atlanta is disappointing on so many levels, and let's discuss on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and contributor for SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fanside Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. Additionally, follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, the White Sox had a chance to win a series in Atlanta, but blew a 6-run lead on Tuesday and did nothing at the plate last night. Let's discuss how this series loss was disappointing on so many levels. Then Martin Perez actually wants to return to the team next year. Let's discuss if that should happen. And finally, let's discuss hoping Wikelman Gonzalez works out during his third stint this season with the big league team. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the USA. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. All right, so I know I've been preaching wins and losses don't matter this season. I know I sound like a broken record. And I'm sure some of you are going to jump in the comments and be like, Todd, you said wins and losses don't matter, so why is this series loss disappointing? Well, first, the young Sox core does have to start learning to win at some point. So it would be nice if, when the offense builds up a 6-run lead, the bullpen actually protects it, which didn't happen on Wednesday night. Sox go up 10-4, and the bullpen proceeds to give up 7 straight runs. Sox lose 11-10. And then it would also be great when a starting pitcher dominates on the mound that the lineup actually produces some offense to support that dominant performance, which didn't happen last night as the White Sox got shut out 1-0, despite Martin Perez being brilliant on the mound for 5 1/3 innings. So it's just getting, you would like to see when you have these opportunities to win that as the season progresses, maybe the White Sox cash in on them. I mean, their lead in the Tankathon standings seems pretty solid on safe ground, so it can't hurt now to win a few of these run-1 games, which, by the way, the White Sox have now still only won 9 games decided by a run or less. And they, again, lost 2 games decided by a single run. I believe they're 9-30 now in games decided by a single run. And what's even more disappointing is this lineup was producing in the first 2 games of the series and then did nothing last night. Nothing. 4 hits, 1 walk. No one got to second base. Not a single runner. The closest, Luis Robert Jr. tried to get there, but got caught stealing. And you just walk away with 1 victory. And it's disappointing because the young core produced on Monday and Tuesday. 1 win to show for it. I mean, you get evidence from Kyle Teel that he can be a star player, that he can be more than a solid 2 to 3 F4 player, that he could be a potential all-star. Because that's the question. How high is his ceiling? It's still a little bit unknown. Could he be a good player relative to the catching position? If that's the case, those are usually guys that hit 250, 10 to 20 home runs. Or is he actually going to be a good hitter relative to the rest of the league, like Cal Riley? And he goes 4 for 5 on Monday, along with a home run, and then 2 for 5 on Tuesday with another home run and 4 RBIs. Basically helps build up that 10-4 lead. But the bullpen cannot give Tuesday night being basically the Kyle Teel game because all the pitchers are terrible in high leverage. And I'm going to tackle that in the third segment. But they're just bad. So while I've questioned Will Venable's ability to manage a bullpen, and I have, because sometimes the process has been off kilter, and that's what I'm sticking to. when I judge Will Venable right now in the bullpen is more of what's the process he's using. Is he getting guys up in time? Should he have stuck with maybe Grant Taylor longer or not? Why did he go to this guy? I've criticized him for that. But in the grand scheme of things, it's still hard to judge him because most of these bullpen pitchers, they're bad in high leverage. Some of them are even bad in low leverage. But again, I'll tackle that in the final segment. But I find the series loss disappointing because, again, it started on such a high note. I mean, on Monday, you got 4 home runs, one from Brooks Baldwin, another from Luis Robert Jr. Then you got Lenyn Sosa, who hits his 3rd homer in 4 days, and then Teel. And you also got to see in the series how this team can be successful moving forward. Power. Power, 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 power. Now, then to add layers on, you get guys who can work counts to get on base. And then obviously power. Get guys that can crush home runs to get them in, or at a minimum, hit some doubles to the gaps. And then the next step, get those guys too in your lineup that can get timely hits to score runs when sometimes the ball isn't going over the fence. That's the secret sauce. It doesn't need to be this hard. And yet the White Sox make it hard to build a roster of power because, I don't know, Jerry Reinsdorf likes David Eckstein and he likes cheaper bats, I guess. And then you lose a game because the bullpen struggles to protect a lead, a big lead. And then last night, you get the exact opposite, where the pitching was good. Martin Perez, good. Mike Vassell, good. The bats, terrible. And Martin Perez deserved better, and I'm going to talk about him more in the second segment. But he makes his first start since April. Pitch is great. The only reason Atlanta even scores a run is Colson Montgomery commits an error, and that will happen. It's part of the process. He's still 4 outs above average. But the offense produces nothing. Nothing. Zip, zero, zilch. Again, 4 hits. 4. And if it was 4 doubles, okay, you gave yourself an opportunity, but they didn't even give themselves an opportunity to score runs. The White Sox were 0 for 0 with runners in scoring position because nobody was in scoring position. And it was like, what happened? You scored 23 runs in 2 games, and you turn around and do absolutely nothing. And I know Hurston Waldrop is a highly regarded young pitcher, but he looked like, if you took Tom Glavine, Greg Maddux, and John Smoltz, put them all together. I mean, he looked amazing out there. And turned the offense into feeble. And I guess that's where it's kind of disappointing, is you just want to see some growth toward being that power team you hope that wins more games in 2026 and beyond. And instead, you got regression. I mean, you got no walks last night being taken. A lot of free swinging instead with 9 strikeouts. And I know the guys, the quotes are coming out that they're frustrated after blowing that 10-4 lead on Tuesday. But instead of being frustrated, let's just move forward. Let's look at it, okay, learning experience. Let's try to get the next one. And they just didn't. And I think that's why the series was just so disappointing, is that it looked like some progress was going to be made. And instead, still same old bad White Sox. But Martin Perez, he believes better days are ahead for the Pale Hose, and he would like to be part of it. Let's discuss if the White Sox should bring him back next season after the break on Locked On White Sox. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. And I loved how Monarch Money helped me find all these subscriptions to streaming services that I was paying for that I no longer use. Yeah, those free trials eventually means they start charging you. And if you forget about it, those things can slowly suck money out of your bank account. But that's not happening to me anymore with Monarch Money. And my wife loves using it because it makes budgeting so easy. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB. And welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So, Martin Perez said after the game he wants to come back in 2026. This is what he told Scott Merkin. Scott Merkin, the White Sox MLB.com beat reporter, he tweeted this out at Scott Merkin. And for those watching on YouTube, you can see the tweet here. Martin Perez on wanting to be with the White Sox in 26. Quote, "They know already, I think next year is going to be a good year for this organization. And if they give me the chance, I want to be part of the good years," end quote. And Martin Perez, I love the positivity that he has. I mean, he's been the one guy that's been constantly saying, this team can do better. Things are going to get turned around quickly. He's the one guy that, said as he was returning, I believe he told Chuck Garfien that, hey, I'm talking to guys around the league. The reputation is getting better. Maybe people want to come to the White Sox. That's just what he's saying. And honestly, I wouldn't mind if the front office decided to bring him back. Just not at $10 million because that's his club option. And this isn't, hey, Todd, again, your $10 million isn't much these days. Like I kept hearing with the $20 million for Luis Robert Jr. $20 million isn't much these days. You got to remember, first of all, this is the White Sox we're talking about. Jerry Reinsdorf will still own the team until at least 2029. He doesn't authorize big contracts. So when you talk about things like 10 to 20 million, it is a big deal. Now, those that argue, hey, exercising Luis Robert Jr.'s $20 million option, though, still a drop in the bucket. Okay, I can sort of see it because he can at least still impact a game every day, whether it's in the field, like he made that nice diving catch yesterday to keep the game 1-0. He can still run the bases. He can still hit for some power, and he can crush left-handed pitching. Okay. I get with the low payroll that the White Sox will probably have again next year, exercising Luis Robert Jr.'s $20 million option to see if you can rebuild his trade value again to what Chris Getz exceedingly thinks it's that high. Fine, I get it. But Perez takes the ball every 5 days. And there was a thought that his career was going to be over this year with that elbow injury he suffered in April. And there was talk that he might need a Tommy John surgery, and that would have been number 2. At age 34, usually guys that old don't come back from a second Tommy John. And I give him a lot of credit for working his way back and rehabbing and going that route and being able to pitch and pitch effectively. But to me, that's a lot of money to tie up in an innings eater because that's basically his reputation. It's one of the reasons why they brought him in. They needed him to eat up innings. Well, he didn't eat up many innings because his arm got hurt. Do you want to risk that again? Now, I do think there are reasons to bring him back at a reduced price than the $10 million mutual option. And you could say, come on, can we upgrade some talent? I mean, he has been very good this year in the few games he pitched in April before he got injured. And again, he was great last night. And the rotation is going to need a lefty next year because I'm not sure Kai Busch is going to be ready in time for opening day because he needed Tommy John surgery, remember, at the start of spring training. It's a 12 to 18-month rehab. And even if he is ready, he's still a complete unknown because, yeah, we saw some flashes in 2024 when he got a few starts, but we also saw a guy who struggled mightily with his command. And Shane Murphy, he's the other, lefty in the system that could potentially, theoretically, you could give him a shot. But the issue is that we're already seeing, let's say he does win a job and he pitches well, because according to Brian Bannister, he has some of the best stuff in the system. And he wins the job and he's pitching well. Will his endurance hold up? Because we're seeing, Shane Smith got gassed. Sean Burke, in a way, has gotten gassed. So it's good to have a guy who has established outside of the season that he can make it through a full season. Sometimes he gets roughed up. Sometimes he's pretty good. And the White Sox will need to add at least 2 pitchers to the rotation next year. Because I'm not giving up on Sean Burke. I still think the stuff is there. He just obviously has to command it better. And I think the difference we're seeing during this rebuild is Chris Getz is going to show that he's going to be different than Rick Hahn during this version of the rebuild. He's going to have guys go and work out these bigger issues in the minors rather than the big leagues. Because remember, Lucas Giolito was the worst pitcher in baseball in 2018. They let him pitch the entire time because in Rick Hahn's viewpoint, well, wins and losses don't matter. Development does. So let him get roughed up and go through it. They're obviously not letting Sean Burke go through it. They would rather him go through it down in the minors. It's a difference of opinion. We'll see which works out better. But I'm not giving up on him. But you still got then Davis Martin, Shane Smith, and I would say Burke, because I am ruling out Cannon, at least for now. Just because the reason why I'm ruling him out is it's become evident that the book is out on him. He just doesn't have that wipeout pitch. He doesn't have that finishing move, as I keep saying. So hitters are now just sitting on him to either make that mistake, or if he does try to come into the strike zone, they're going to go, and pound it because, he's going to try to maybe leave something maybe down in the strike zone to induce that weak contact. And a lot of pitchers are saying, a lot of hitters are saying, well, I can still crush that because his stuff doesn't always miss bats. Because again, he's a induced to weak contact pitcher. And I'm just having trouble seeing him being a long-term pitcher when A, the Sox have more promising prospects in the system, and B, without that finishing move pitch, hit my cord there. Sorry, guys. Without that finishing move pitch, I just see him having more bad outings like we saw towards the end before he was demoted. I don't think we're going to be getting more good. We're going to be probably getting a lot more him getting roughed up. So the White Sox need to add 2 pitchers. And I do think they should get a veteran presence in that rotation for next year. I mean, while Martin Smith will have just completed their first full season, it's still not exactly enough of, piles of outings where you can have those skins on the wall to impress other young pitchers about, hey, this is how we go about our business because I've done this, this, and this. It'll be like, yeah, I did this last year. They could still use a guy to show them basically the way. This is how you conduct your business as a big league pitcher. And Perez has also brought the intangibles like being a good clubhouse guy. So you got some viable reasons to bring back Perez. Except at $10 million, I don't think you should be bringing him back. And maybe Jerry allows some money like that to be spent on a pitcher, so the Sox could potentially go after an upgrade in the starting pitcher 1-year deal free agent market. Or at least they could go a little bit younger. Maybe they entertain bringing back Adrian Hauser. Or again, maybe you split the $10 million between 2 veteran starters to cover for some time for guys like Drew Thorpe and Mason Adams and Bush to fully rehab, and also allow some of them of your younger prospects like Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith to continue to work on their command a bit more in the minors. Although they may not have to split the money if Yoandres Gomez proves his last 2 starts are not a flash in the pan. But Spotrac projects Perez should get $5 million. That's what they're projecting. So I don't think you want to double his salary, although you might have to pay him $7.5 million in that you'd probably have to still pay him his $1.5 million option. I mean, his $1.5 million buyout to avoid having to go through the MLBPA approving him basically working out an agreement to take a pay cut. So maybe you negotiate a $5 million deal to return $7.5 million spent. That might be worth what he brings to the table. Well, I'm hoping Wikelman Gonzalez brings throwing strikes to the table. Let's discuss why I hope he pans out in his third call-up after the break. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. And whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. And I know I could have used a 5-Hour Energy Transfusion after walking 18 with my buddy back when we were teenagers. We thought we got this great deal to walk 18, not realizing this is a long course. And man, we were dragging on the back nine. And golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape ginger lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down that beverage cart. And now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. And recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever they get their podcasts, as this show's available on all major podcast platforms. And you can see I'm back in my regular surroundings. The basement flood has now been all completely fixed. The carpet's been ripped up. I just got to figure out what to do, my wife and I. But I'm back in my normal settings. I don't feel like I'm in that tunnel anymore. I had to record in basically my guest bedroom. So we're back. White Sox stuff, as you can see. Got some of my Bucks because I can't be a Bulls fan anymore. I can't do the Bulls. I just didn't have the emotional attachment to the Bulls like I do the White Sox. All this stuff there. So we're back. So it's amazing how Owen White and Elvis Gregorio suddenly are hurt after having terrible outings. I don't know if they are just faking injuries, but it's kind of interesting that all of a sudden, like, hey, Owen, your hip hurts, that type of stuff. But whatever. We don't have to see them in relief anymore. Hopefully we never hear from these guys again. I have no problem with kicking the tires on them, but give them short runways, on to the next one. And Wikelman Gonzalez is back up. And I'm hoping he can make the ball dance like he did in his last outing before he was demoted. I don't know. Again, I was like, why are they demoting him? He had that ball dancing against the Guardians. But we had to see Owen White and Elvis Gregorio more, I guess. Frankly, folks, the White Sox front office has got to start giving the young pitchers they have in their system that has velocity a shot to prove that they can be high leverage high leverage relievers. They basically got to start trying this now because they need guys who have the stuff to miss bats. Because while I've come to respect Brandon Eisert, I have, because he's got that 26% strikeout percentage, but he's doing it basically with wizardry. He's using that sort of funky delivery, that, that 3/4 arm angle slot. But if it doesn't deceive a hitter and he makes a mistake, he just doesn't have the velocity to still miss a bat. And instead it gets hit. It gets hit hard. And this team is terrible in high leverage situations. A league worst 8.96 ERA according to Fangraphs. And a league worst 1.75 whip in those situations per Fangraphs. And that whip is likely why the bullpen ERA is actually dwarfing the 4.83 FIP in those situations, which is still 27th in the league. So still not great, Bob. They're 19th in strikeouts in those situations, 28th in opponent batting average in high leverage situations, 23 in BABIP. They just don't miss bats much. And you want to get those swings and misses and those strikeouts in those clutch situations. And they just don't do it. And when I saw Gonzalez in his last outing on 8-9 against Cleveland, he at least had the ball dancing. He had it moving. I call it the dancing eye test. Can you get some movement? Can you get command? Can it get where it needs to go to deceive those hitters where they can't, they think it's going to be there and it's darts. And he was doing that. And we need more of those guys, especially for high leverage. Because again, 9 wins in single run games. 9. And part of it is they're having trouble getting the timely hit, obviously, but they're also having the bullpen that just cannot get the job done. They need more guys that can protect leads, and I just want to see what Gonzalez can do. And if Grant Taylor's arm says he can't be a starter, then he needs to be also out there the rest of the way in those situations to continue to get the experience. And then can we eventually see Peyton Pallette and his velocity too? Can we? I mean, do we really need to keep tying up a 40-man roster spot with Tyler Gilbert? Do we? Really? I mean, what are we doing here? You know, I might be irrationally high on those 3 forming a late inning nucleus, but at least let's see if it can happen rather than just continuing to gamble that Jordan Leisure can be consistent enough, or Eisert's, wizardry can fool folks. Let's just get guys who, have the stuff to miss bats. Let's try that out. It could work. I don't know. It's a crazy theory, but let's try it, especially when wins and losses don't matter, except for it was disappointing that they didn't get the series win in Atlanta. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow to discuss if it's realistic to think the White Sox could pass the Twins in the standings next year. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the disappointing series loss to the Braves, Martin Perez wanting to come back next season, and hoping Wikelman Gonzalez works out in the bullpen. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube. X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.